I was married 7 years and came home from a business trip at 2 a.m. My wife's location had vanished from our family locator app. I stood in the hallway with my suitcase, opened the app, and her pin read off. I tapped it, closed it, opened it again. It stayed off. That was the first anomaly. I stood in the hallway with my suitcase for a long minute. The house smelled faintly of laundry detergent and late night coffee. I heard the HVAC hum and a distant refrigerator ping. I opened the app again, thumb hesitating over the screen. Her pin read off, gray and lonely on the digital map. I tapped it once, twice, then closed and reopened the app. My suitcase strap dug into my palm. The house felt foreign. I wondered if the app simply had a rare outage. We had 2 kids and a routine. I traveled 4 days a week. She handled mornings. I handled dinners and bedtime. We used a shared calendar for soccer, playdates, and dentist visits. We started the location app after our youngest was born. It felt normal to check it when I worried about pickups. Part of me trusted our routines. Another part of me checked my phone when I had doubts. Those doubts were small at first. They grew over 3 months. Mornings smelled of oatmeal and backpack straps, afternoons of wet towels. I set multiple alarms and synced our shared calendar every Sunday. I opened the locator app more often than I admitted to friends. Part of me wanted to trust the picture we had painted. Another part of me waited for confirmation before letting anger surface. Doubts accumulated like lint under the dryer filter, unseen until heavy. The next morning, she made coffee and said we should talk. I showed her the off status. She said the app was glitching and I was overreacting. I said, "Your pin shows off at 2 a.m." She said, "I turned it off. I needed privacy." I asked, "Privacy from what?" She said nothing and looked at the sink. Those 2 minutes mattered. That weekend seemed fine. We took the kids to the pool and had a late dinner. She hugged me at bedtime and said, "I think we can work this out." I believed her for the first time in weeks. The next morning, she handed me a hand-drawn custody rotation. I stared at names, weekdays, and initials. She said, "I filed for divorce." I asked, "When?" She said, "Yesterday." I laughed once, short and stunned. The pool smelled of chlorine and sunscreen. Kids shrieked happily nearby. She smiled as she applied sunscreen to our youngest shoulders. That hug before bed felt deliberate and soft around my neck. Her cartoon custody rotation looked tidy, written with a ballpoint pen. I laughed once, short and stunned, then folded the paper slowly. I searched her phone that day. I found a Snapchat streak with an unknown coworker, hundreds of days long, snaps of bars and hotel beds. I took screenshots and photographed the custody rotation. Those 2 images felt like tipping points. I called Jenna, a close friend who went on some of her girls' trips. Her voice was flat and practical. Her phone was unlocked with a familiar lock screen wallpaper of our kids. I scrolled through messages, heart banging, fingers sticky from travel snacks. The Snapchat streak stared back with small yellow lightning bolts. Hundreds of days, hotel sheets and drinks, a glowing private world. I took screenshots, feeling like a thief in my own home. I taped the custody rotation into my wallet for uncertain comfort. I called Jenna, hands shaking, the background dishwasher clanking gently. Her voice was flat and practical. She didn't sugarcoat anything. "Do you think she was truthful about where she went?" I asked. She said summer plans were for family time, Jenna replied. "Do you know this coworker?" I asked. "No, she didn't mention him." Jenna said, "Part of me wanted to talk to my wife immediately. Another part wanted facts first." Over the next week, I tracked small things. Phones were reinstalled and deleted at odd hours. Late-night rides changed pickup times on the calendar. Several weekends were labeled girls' trip with vague destinations. A neighbor mentioned seeing her car come home at 3 a.m. Once the babysitter, Maria, told me my wife left early on a Saturday night. I wrote dates and times on a legal pad. Patterns formed that didn't add up. I decided to check booking records next. I created a simple spreadsheet for dates, times, and notes. I printed bank statements and highlighted suspicious charges with a marker. I photographed calendar changes and saved them to a cloud folder. Neighbors texted with small details. I copied their words verbatim. I wondered if compiling this would feel like obsession or defense. 3 days later, an Airbnb confirmation landed in my email under her account with a partial payment recorded. The reservation covered 2 nights in August with a clear timestamp and a 3 p.m. check-in. That contradicted her timeline for the weekend. I screenshot the confirmation, saved the number, printed the receipt, and put it in an envelope. Part of me wanted to confront her then. Another part wanted proof before accusing her. The email subject line read reservation confirmation for an August stay. The host name was abbreviated. Payment showed a card ending in 3,421. I saved the host number and dialed once, hands trembling slightly. Her voicemail was full or turned off. Nothing useful recorded. I printed another copy and slipped it into a clear envelope. I placed the envelope in the bottom drawer of my desk. The kitchen confrontation happened the next morning. I slid the Airbnb confirmation across the table. She read it, then looked up slowly. "This shows you were out 2 nights in August," I said. "I didn't think it mattered," she said. "Why turn off location then?" I asked. "I needed space," she said. "Was someone else there?" I asked. "No, it was a friend's place," she said. The kitchen tiles felt cold under my shoes. The coffee steamed. Sunlight striped the table through half-closed blinds, dust motes floating. She read the printout slowly, her jaw tight like a line. I laid out texts, calendar screenshots, and bank charges across counters. Her answers felt thin, like tissue stretched over a bowl. Part of me wanted to scream and run from the room. I called an attorney that day. The woman who answered had a measured voice and clear instructions. The attorney's office smelled faintly of coffee and old books. Her assistant handed me a stack of intake forms and a pen. I filled them out in spiky handwriting, heart racing at odd beats. The lawyer asked calm questions and typed notes as I spoke. You need to start collecting evidence now, she said. Save messages, receipts, location logs, and any photos. Do I hire a private investigator? I asked. If you suspect concealment, yes, hire one, she said. Will that help with custody? It can. Focus on the children's routine first. I printed them at home and labeled each page with sticky notes. I printed bank statements at home and labeled them with bright stickers. I notarized a neighbor affidavit and filed the forms in order. I wondered if involving lawyers would fray the remaining family ties. I hired a PI the following week. He sent a report with timestamps and photos confirming patterns of turned-off location days and late check-ins. He pulled public booking records and found the Airbnb confirmation I already had. He returned with time-stamped location checks, photos of keys, and logs showing her phone off. I forwarded the report to my lawyer and scheduled an intake meeting. Part of me felt relieved someone had a plan. Another part worried about the cost. He met me in a coffee shop wearing a worn leather jacket. He slid a manila envelope across the table without much ceremony. Inside were time-stamped photos, GPS logs, and terse observation notes. He explained methods quietly, voice more practical than moralizing today. I handed him payment and felt a gate close in my chest. He promised discreet monitoring and nightly logs delivered by noon daily. Part of me felt relieved that someone tracked the haze clearly. Another part worried about costs and what it would reveal next. Timeline in broad strokes. July, she confessed unhappiness. August had the Airbnb reservation that contradicted her claim. Late July through August there were repeated girls' trips with on-off location patterns. In September I discovered the Snapchat streak and noted app reinstalls. Mid-September I retained a PI. 2 weeks after hiring him she filed for divorce. I filed my response the next day. A temporary custody hearing happened within 4 weeks. I gathered evidence like a checklist. I printed the Airbnb confirmation and highlighted the partial payment. A card ending in 3,421 matched the charge. I found a 4,150 boutique hotel charge on August 20th. There was a partially refundable deposit for an Airbnb on September 7th through 9th. I matched those charges with Snapchat timestamps and the PI's notes. I organized everything into a binder. Part of me wanted to throw the papers away. Another part felt steadier. I had something concrete. I bought a 3-ring binder and tabbed sections by color. Receipts were cropped and printed in neat columns, margins white. I printed the form and stapled supporting documents to each page. The binder's spine creaked the first time I opened it in court. I kept a duplicate set at home under a stack of magazines. Part of me wanted to hide the binder away forever, untouched. Neighbors started giving statements. One text arrived at 3 a.m., saw her car leave at midnight Monday. Maria said my wife left at 10 p.m. On nights I was out of town and sometimes claimed she was going to a support group. I made appointments to notarize affidavits. My lawyer said we needed witness statements for discovery. Part of me wanted to rush. Another part kept me methodical. Maria wrote her account with blunt handwriting and an address at top. I printed it, signed beside her words, then found a notary, stamped the page, and initialed the corner official and small. A neighbor texted a photo of a car at midnight on Tuesday. I saved the image and included it in the evidence binder. I wondered if these statements would carry weight against plausible denials. Mediation was scheduled. We sat in a room with folders and receipts. The mediator asked basic questions and flipped through documents. My attorney placed the PI report on the table. The PI had witness statements and time-stamped photos. I watched my wife's face as the mediator read the evidence. The mediation room smelled of neutral cleaner and brewed tea. We sat across a table covered with legal pads and tissues. The mediator wore round glasses and a calm expression, pen poised. "We are here to find workable solutions today," she said. I placed the PI report before her and watched her read carefully. The room held its breath during the part where dates contradicted stories. "Why would you turn off your location at 2 a.m.? I needed space," she said, her voice small and quick. That answer didn't match bank charges and timestamps on files. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked quietly. She said, "I thought it is better this way. I wanted honesty," I said, "not hiding things." Voices rose by the third exchange. People in the room turned to look. The mediator asked both of us to stay calm. My wife denied deliberate concealment at first. I showed the Airbnb confirmation, the bank charges, Snapchat screenshots, and the PI report. I asked direct questions and named dates. The room listened. The mediator pressed her for answers. She admitted to turning off location and booking nights away. The mediator noted the contradictions in witness statements. That admission changed the room's tone and felt pivotal in front of neutral eyes. After mediation failed, we moved toward temporary orders. At the courthouse, I waited with other parents while a clerk stamped my petition and handed numbered tickets. 2 weeks later, she told me she had filed first. I felt the air leave my chest. I called my attorney. He said, "File your response today." I signed more forms and filed. The courthouse smelled like varnish and yesterday's coffee linoleum shining. A security guard checked my bag and nodded without commenting. The clerk stamped my petition. The stamp felt cold on paper. I waited with other parents, their faces marked by small fatigue. 2 weeks later, she told me she had filed first. I sat. I called my attorney. His voice clipped and directing next steps. During discovery, my lawyer found more bank charges that mattered. The boutique hotel charge, the Airbnb partial payment, and small restaurant tabs lined up with the PI's log. He said these would be admissible evidence. I printed everything into a packet and handed it to him. Part of me wanted validation. Another part feared the hearings ahead. My home printer jammed twice as I printed bank statements frantically. I used yellow highlighter for charges and red for lodging expenses. I labeled each exhibit with sticky notes and an exhibit number. My lawyer took the packet and promised thorough review before filing. I wondered if every highlighted line would change a judge's mind. A temporary orders hearing was scheduled within 4 weeks. I practiced short statements focused on the children's routine, not revenge. I brought a binder with the Airbnb confirmation, bank statements, PI report, and a typed chronology for the judge. I spoke clearly when called. The judge asked about overnight stays and the children's schedule. I explained drop-offs, the school bus route, and soccer practice times. I emphasized the need for consistency. The judge granted temporary custody arrangements favoring predictable parenting time. I practiced my short statements in the bathroom mirror each night. The binder sat open on the kitchen table like a small Bible. At the hearing, the courtroom felt colder than the waiting room. I handed a clean chronology to the bailiff and waited for call. The judge listened with a steady gaze and occasional note-taking. Can you summarize the children's weekday routine succinctly for the court? School pickup is at 3:15, bus drop at 7:45, soccer practice Wednesdays. Consistency is what is best for them, not surprises or late nights. The temporary order gave me primary custody during school days and defined weekend rotations. It included a clause requiring notification for overnight travel. The relief was practical and dull. I called the kids and told them dinner plans were back to normal. Part of me felt safe again. Another part worried about permanent outcomes. The judge granted temporary custody arrangements favoring predictable weekday routines. I felt oddly bureaucratic joy when the order printed from the clerk. I called the kids and arranged dinner like nothing had changed. Part of me wanted to celebrate alone and call a friend afterwards. Another part felt exhausted by the relentless paperwork and quiet mornings. I kept the order laminated and placed it in an obvious folder. We returned to mediation to negotiate settlement and custody details. The P's affidavit was sealed and added to the record. Bank statements matched Airbnb and hotel receipts. My attorney argued those payments showed deliberate concealment relevant to custody and financial settlement. The mediator proposed supervised exchanges for the first month to protect the kids. We accepted that for stability. We sat with stacks of proposed parenting plans and spreadsheets between us. My attorney suggested supervised exchanges initially for the children's adjustment. The mediator pushed for small concessions on both sides to finalize settlement. We discussed financial splits and a modest transfer of savings to settle. Can we agree on supervised handoffs for the first month to protect stability? Yes, let's do that and revisit after 30 days with documentation. We signed tentative papers that included a modest financial exchange and a final custody agreement. The mediator filed the agreement for court approval. 3 weeks later, the judge reviewed the settlement, asked if we signed voluntarily, and approved the custody plan and settlement. I felt relief and fatigue in equal measure. The paperwork secured mornings and school pickups. It did not repair trust. We signed and initialed pages, hands cramped from too many signatures. The mediator filed the tentative agreement and scheduled court review for 3 weeks. The judge asked if we signed voluntarily and asked several clear questions. Approval came with a signature that felt strangely final and small. At home, the kids adjusted quickly. Mornings became noisy and messy again. I made coffee while packing lunches and taped the Airbnb reservation into a court file. I kept the P's affidavit in the binder. Part of me wanted to tear the documents up. Another part wanted them preserved as proof of broken trust. The kids adapted with elastic resilience, uniforms rumpled and backpacks askew. Mornings became ritual again. Cereal boxes opened with familiar clatter. I packed lunches, kissed foreheads, and reviewed soccer gear on Mondays. I taped the Airbnb reservation into the court file like a bookmark. Part of me wanted to destroy every reminder and start fresh somewhere else. Another part wanted the record preserved for the final hearing's clarity. I kept receipts, screenshots, neighbor texts, and Maria's affidavit. I logged dates and times on a legal pad. I printed the Airbnb confirmation and filed it in an envelope. I kept the custody rotation paper she gave me, the Snapchat screenshots, the PI's timestamps, and the card ending in 3421 noted in the Airbnb record. I handed copies to my lawyer. Every night, I placed the binder on the kitchen counter like a talisman. I kept receipts, screenshots, neighbor texts, and Maria's sworn affidavit nearby. I logged dates and times precise as a clerk entering records. I wondered if preserving truth would feel like settling or salvation. Part of me missed the easy mornings with jokes about burnt toast. Part of me wanted the kids to know truth without being harmed further. Part of me missed what we had. Part of me understood some things could not return. Truth won custody, trust did not return.